Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My unparalleled co-host is Laura Blackwell. And I hope that you're all healthy and safe and taking care of yourselves and each other. I started Story Hour early during the pandemic in like February, March timeframe and last year, really with the idea of my writer friends and me sharing our work with each other and building sort of a little small nexus of community. And it just grew. Shortly thereafter, Laura joined me as co-host. And we've been going strong for well over a year and a half now, every week, except for the week between Christmas and New Year's. So figure that's about 80 weeks and 2 authors. So a session. So we've had about, somewhere close to 150 really great writers come through Story Hour and share their work with us. This has been such a privilege to do this. So how does this work? We basically turn to an ancient and time-honored form of entertainment, which is folks sitting around the fire just telling each other lies. And that's what we do here every week. We have 2 authors, about 30 minutes each, no Q&A. Some self-promotion, of course, is permitted and encouraged because we're writers after all. And we also ask our authors to suggest some organization that does some good in the public comments. And we will shamelessly shill that before the session starts. So if you're fortunate enough to be in a position to help financially, please consider doing that. If not, just be aware, and if you're so inclined, spread the awareness to your friends and neighbors and colleagues. So James is reading tonight for girlswritenow.org. That's W-R-I-T-E now, not R-I-G-H-T. Girls Right Now is the first writing and mentoring organization for girls. They've been a nationally respected leader in arts education for over 20 years. They break down the barriers of gender, race, and poverty, pairing underserved young women and gender nonconforming youth with professional women writers and digital media makers, building skills, networks, and lifelong relationships that open doors and change lives. The organization has been distinguished 3 times by the White House as one of the nation's top youth programs, twice by the Nonprofit Excellence Awards as one of New York's top 10 nonprofits, and ranks in the top 4% of programs nationwide for outstanding performance in driving growth in social emotional outcomes for young people. Thank you for suggesting this, James. It sounds like a great organization. Wendy is reading tonight for OregonWild.org. Oregon Wild works to protect and restore Oregon's wildlands, wildlife, and waters as an enduring legacy for future generations. It also has been around for a while. It was founded in 1974. They represent the fish and wildlife, ancient forests, and the rich diversity of public lands and landscapes that make Oregon so special. They work to protect and restore the parts of the natural world that do not have a human voice, while not forgetting that humans are interconnected with nature and nature's systems. Also, sounds like a terrific organization. Thank you, Wendy, for suggesting it. It's OregonWild.org, and both these URLs will be posted in the chat window. So we're going to start tonight completely arbitrarily with Wendy Wagner. Wendy N. Wagner is the author of the horror novel The Deer Kings and the forthcoming gothic novella The Secret Skin. Her previous work includes the SF thriller An Oath of Dogs. What a great title. Plus 2 novels for the Pathfinder role-playing game and over 50 short stories, essays, and poems. A Hugo Award-winning editor of short fiction, she's also the editor of Nightmare magazine. She lives in Oregon with her very understanding family, 2 large cats, a small dog that might actually be a Muppet. You can keep up with her at winnywoohoo.com. Wendy, take it away.
Thanks so much for having me, Daniel.
My pleasure.
Fun to be here. I'm going to read actually kind of an older story of mine. It's a little on the short side, so there might be time to get in a poem that goes with it. And it's sort of an evening of American horror, because this story is called American Farmhouse Style. Outside the kindergarten classroom, Mel kissed Lydia goodbye, waved back at her little girl, and hurried toward home, eager to get out of the traffic of hovering Volvos and Lexuses, those pernicious zits of life in a gentrified neighborhood. She turned a corner and scowled. Another pisser, renovated historic homes whose changes are motivated by trends, not taste. This particular remodeled craftsman featured new additions that had swallowed most of the lot, leaving only a koi pond with a lighted fountain. What a way to ruin classic American style. She crossed to the other side of the street. Once this whole neighborhood had been just a few scattered farms. The blocks were still long and winding along the old property lines. Plants out of favor with modern gardeners appeared at the edges of the sidewalk. Lemon balm and butterfly bush, tenacious, unwanted. The house up ahead was no longer fashionable either. It was just a plain farmhouse, 2 stories, gabled porch, and a white picket fence, probably a legacy of those original settlers. A gnarled but blooming plum tree stretched out over the sidewalk. A rain-sogged petal dropped off it and down Mel's neck. She wiped it away with a shudder, but she didn't move from beneath the cover of the branches. She was studying the house, envisioning the people who lived there. The patchy lawn, mostly dandelions and maple seedlings, spoke of people who didn't get outside nearly enough. Probably an older couple, left over from the days when this was a working-class neighborhood, a stooped granny who baked cookies, and a man ashamed by the neglect of his rhododendrons. Their branches, skeletal and gray, clawed at the front windows. The shed at the corner of the lot looked lucky it hadn't fallen down yet. She shook her head at the sad outbuilding, a leftover from the farming days, a drying shed or a tractor garage, maybe. The window above its big sliding door stared down at her with glass gone milky with spider webs. Behind the peeling door, something thudded. Melody jumped. It sounded again, a deep, resonant thud that made a paint chip flutter to the ground. What the hell? She whispered. Again, the thud repeated after a few seconds, and then again. She put her hand out to the door. I can see you're a fellow antique lover. The aged voice in her ear made Mel jump. She whipped around. The speaker, a man so old the threads of hair across his spotted pate had gone transparent, smiled the awkward smile of those with ill-fitting dentures. I am so sorry. We hardly ever get visitors, and I get a tad enthusiastic sometimes. Melody had to look away from his lips, liver colored around the square white teeth. Oh, no, I was just, she flickered a nervous hand, the same hand that had reached out without well-worked intent toward the shed door, just so caught up in the house. The awful tinted lips folded into a pleased grin. I knew it, a fellow lover of the American farmhouse. You know, this was one of the first houses built on this side of the river. Quite the story. He waved a hand to the house, his other arm steering her along. Oh, really? Mel had to smile at him. He was precisely the old man she had imagined, although she hadn't put in that old person smell like newspaper in a damp garage with a hint of naphthalene. She tried not to crinkle her nose. But of course, you must see the inside. The last 150 years have made a few changes, you might imagine, but we've done our best to restore the place. Who is this Ed? Some poor girl you dragged off the street? Another old voice, just as cheerful. A woman with a grandmotherly white bun and long jean skirt stood next to the old rocker on the porch. She laughed out loud then and waved them inside with her dish towel. Well, come on in. But Ed broke in. You'll see the threshold is Oregon red cedar. You can tell by that nice antique silver patina. Popular choice for indoor-outdoor applications. Weather resistant. It was easier to just go along with him. He looked so happy to tell her these facts. There was another thud behind them, but Mel put it out of mind as he closed the door. He pointed out the next object of antiquity. The rag rug is Anna's recreation, of course, but she picked fabrics you would have seen in that period. Give her a chance to ask questions, Ed. I'll get tea on the table. Anna gave a little giggle as she drifted away, a counterpoint to the pounding Mel could still faintly hear outside. She shook her head, trying to clear it of the strange sound, overwhelmed by the old couple, their house, their hospitality. Their graciousness was as anachronistic as their house. Please don't go to any trouble on my part. Ed's face was suddenly very close to hers, kindly smiling with those lips raw and red around white millstone teeth. No, dear, no trouble is too much trouble. We so rarely get guests, Anna added. Please. She waved to the table, all long and polished dark wood. A white doily was perfectly centered in the middle of glossy space. Scones, Anna cooed, fresh baked. Ed settled Mel into a chair, sliding her into place at the table. So glad you stopped by. He lifted the teapot, now just beside the doily. An excuse to use the good teapot. Sterling silver in the style of Revere Jr. Reproduction, but so classic. Anna took the seat beside Mel. Tell me you love the scones. Well, good. The recipe is from my grandmother. The old woman leaned in, smiling, her blue eyes nearly lost in a network of creases and canyons. Ed pressed a scone into Mel's hand. You must try one. Mel tried to smile at Anna. I'll just try it. Oh, but they're so much better with honey. Anna's hand came out with the unmistakable earthine squeeze bottle, and even as Mel's mouth moved toward the warm pastry, Anna's bear dripped out golden goo. The honey coated Mel's lips, sticking them softly together while she chewed and bobbed her head in expected agreement. The thudding was louder now, more insistent in her head, and the two old people's faces were so close, the scone thick starch in her throat. She needed moisture. The teacup was somewhere to her right, she thought, and she fumbled around with her free hand, her right one still honey stuck to the scone. She managed a sip. Anna brought a honeyed finger to her mouth and popped it in. It's so delicious. Mel watched the finger come out of the mouth, sucked clean and pale again. Anna's lips, thin and crepey, were glossy with honey. Finish your tea, dear, and I'll show you the rest of the house, Ed murmured. She looked down at her cup, half empty now, the liquid barely the color of vegetable broth. A lone tea leaf, curled like the limb of a dead beetle, floated at the bottom. Don't rush her, Ed. But really, that's why she's here, to see the house. The pounding was beginning to hurt her head. The air was thick with the toxic stink of mothballs. She had to hurry them along, had to get out of there. Yes, please, the house. I'm so excited to see it. Ed smirked at Anna. Hear that? Come on, dear. He eased back her seat, his stick-like forearms remarkably strong. Mel wondered just how old he was. Take your scone, dear, Anna said, standing so she could pass Mel the pastry. Do you need more honey? A drop of the yellow stuff oozed from her lower lip and then caught itself on her chin. Mel shook her head, unable to speak. Ed's hand was on Mel's elbow. The kitchen, as you'll see, was intensely remodeled in the mid-1960s, but the upstairs is still vintage. His voice droned on, Anna piping in behind Mel's back. Didn't they hear the thumping? Didn't they feel it? Mel could hardly put one foot in front of the other. Her head was aching with the steady, muscle-piercing beat. She felt herself steered from shaker rocker to Amish hope chest, from foot-powered sewing machine to the restored wardrobe, since authentic farmhouses didn't have closets, Ed pointed out, patting the great old thing on its withered side. The sound of a lawnmower, loud enough to cut through the background pounding, drew Mel's gaze out the window. Ed snapped the shade shut. Damn those barbarians! Anna patted Mel's elbow. Ed hates the view from this room, straight into the top floor of the house across the street. Mid-century modern sons of bitches! Ed's eyes bulged. All that money from commerce and usury, Anna added. Drunk on the power of C-notes, he hissed. A fleck of spittle struck Mel's face, tiny, but it rocked her backward, and she brought her hand up to her cheek as if slapped. The sound was so loud here, the smell of mothballs overwhelming. I need to sit down, she whispered. She brought her hand away from her face and saw blood. I'm bleeding! Mel's knees loosened, and she caught herself on the edge of the bed. You've got a little nosebleed, Anna chirped. Rich money-grubbing bastards buying up everything to build worthless new houses. I'm going to be sick, Mel said. Some people get like that with a nosebleed. When I get queasy, I just take a bit of honey. Mel staggered to her feet. I've got to get some fresh air. But the attic, that's where the best pieces are. Ed reached for her elbow, but Mel jerked it away, stumbling out of the room with the modernist view. Don't be ridiculous, Ed. She just wants honey. I'll get you some, young lady, Anna called after Mel. Mel tripped over the braided rug, making for the hallway and the little sunroom at the top of the stairs. The sound had penetrated the bony case of her brain to shake the neurons themselves, shaking them like old rugs until the wrinkles were gone and the dust was loose. Can't vacuum an antique rug. Gotta take it outside and just beat the dirt out. You're in my head, she whimpered. Don't be silly, dear. I'm right here. Now I've got that honey for you. Go ahead and say ah. Anna was somehow in front of Mel, kneeling down to peek into Mel's face. But you haven't seen everything. I've got so much to show you, so much to tell you. And Ed was beside her too, his face cocked sideways and pressed very close, so eager and ready to share. He was smiling, and between those ruddy lips, the teeth moved up and down like the wind-up chattering teeth at novelty stores. She could almost hear the mechanical buzz of them if she could hear anything over the thudding, low and deep and incessant. Can't you hear it? Mel whispered, and tears washed the blood down over her jawline, trickling down her neck, cold. I raised the bees myself right out in our shed. You can hear them sometimes when they're moving around out there. In fact, I think I hear them right now, Ed agreed. I should take you out there so you could meet them. People don't keep bees like these anymore. It's very good honey. See, look, I've had some. Anna's face pushed Ed's out of the way, and even as she spoke, honey poured out over her mouth, her chin, a glossy wave of it flowing down over her shriveled bosom. Ed put out a finger and stole a taste. That is so good. Their voices sounded together. Try some honey. Mel pushed past them. No! The pounding, had it sped up? How could it be louder when the buzzing was louder too? There wasn't room in her head for all of this. She felt wetness gush from her nose. But the hallway, the hand-tooled rocker, was just ahead. Good American white oak and not a nail in the entire piece. That's craftsmanship for you. No! Mel clawed at her head, tearing at the words, tearing at the buzzing, the pounding. It was in there with their voices sticking in her brain with the sweet, sweet taste of honey. She remembered, too late to grab for the stair rail. With only a gasp, she flew over the first stair, arms over her head like a girl on a roller coaster. And then she touched down, her feet catching up, lobbing over, the force of the blow turning her one more somersault before she reached the bottom with a final crunch. Mel lay still. Then she moaned. The door was right in front of her, right there, just a few feet away. She pulled herself forward. There was no walking. There was something wrong, really wrong with her legs. She left a smear of red behind her on the wooden floor. Waxed Douglas fir, not oak or maple, because builders in 1860 expected the floor to be covered and softwoods were cheap. That's a fine idea. Go on outside. Get out there and see what's in the shed. We'll help you there. Anna knelt beside Mel and smiled down at her, and the honey spilled from her mouth, covering Mel's face. It was warm as it worked into her nostrils, between her lips. She tried spitting, tried screaming, but her voice was only a buzz, a low hum against the thudding. The honey filled her mouth, filled her throat. For 1 second, she thought of Lydia, who would be so frightened when Mel failed to pick her up. But that thought was pushed aside by the buzzing, no longer the joke shop buzz of a wind-up toy, but the sound of uncountable bees. And she felt the last desperate thud of her pulse in her ears, no longer incessant. And then there was only sweetness, blessed sweetness, without sound. Okay, it looks like I still have a tiny bit of time. So I will keep up the American theme and read a poem of mine. It came out a couple of years ago in a collection called, a magazine called The New Audient Void. I do want to say one thing about this story, American Farmhouse Style, which I can't even remember the website that it appeared on, but it's long gone. It was published many years ago, but it was kind of inspired by our landlord and landlady at the time, who had restored the house next that they lived in to perfect Victorian style. They had nothing that plugged in the entire house. Except in the basement. They secretly kept like the things that turned on. So I think I loved our landlord and our landlady, but I think I must have had some weird feelings about them given this story. But all right, so our poem that I'm going to read is called The New American Spiritualism. Oh, hey, let me make this small so I can see it better. Take our hands into the sputtering circle, fingers tallow marked and palms crossed with silver. All day we have worked. Tomorrow we will too. Not at the office, but generating revenue for Google. Our clicking today's equivalent of 2 teens knocking their toes into the tables of near religion. No one believes in ectoplasm. Instead, we know we are building the Winchester Mansion one meme at a time. The air clogs with shadows, and our amanuensis breathes them deeply inside her. Are you the one I lost? Are you the one I care about enough to? Yes, she says. Yes, yes, she clicks. Click yes. Yes to donate. And click yes to send thoughts. Yes, prayers. Bullet by yes, bullet into the waiting moments between toil and recoil. The moments melting into seconds, seconds melting into shadows, into faces, into names you can only spell between yes and goodbye.
Wendy N. Wagner, thank you so much. The work was wonderful, but the reading of the work was also just spellbinding. Both the story and the poem. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was so great to be here. I love to get to read out loud. So this was a big treat for me.
We can tell that you love to read out loud. You really do a good job. Thank you. So as we commonly do, we just kind of take a breath, pause, breathe in, breathe out, ready to shift gear to the next author. So we're going to do that. Just take a breath, breathe in, breathe out. All right. James Chambers received the Bram Stoker Award for the graphic novel Kolchak the Night Stalker, The Forgotten Lore of Edgar Allan Poe. And he's also a 3-time Stoker Award nominee. He's the author of the collection On the Night Border, which is described by Booklist as a haunting exploration of the space where the real world and nightmares collide, and Resurrection House, and the dark urban fantasy novella 3 Chords of Chaos. Publishers Weekly gave his Lovecraftian collection, The Engines of Sacrifice, a starred review and called it chillingly evocative. He edited the anthology Under Twin Suns, Alternate Histories of the Yellow Sign, and his newest collection, On the Hierophant Road, received a starred review from Booklist, and it's forthcoming in October from Raw Dog Screaming Press. That is a really great name for a publishing shop. I love it. Moonstone Books recently published his new Kolchak novella, Kolchak the Night Stalker's The Faceless God. His website is jameschambersonline.com. James, we are in your capable hands. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the Story Hour. So I picked a piece from my forthcoming collection On the Hierophant Road, and this is not precisely horror. It's a bit more fantasy, but it definitely has a dark edge to it, and I hope you will enjoy it. This is called The Flying Rock. Everyone should have a chance to fly before they forget how, Daniel said. The flying rock sat on the far edge of the clearing, and the little meadow looked as if nothing had changed in all the many years since Daniel had last been there. A thick ring of oaks, birches, and honeysuckle bushes still encircled it, casting hazy shadows onto the grass, lacing the air with a soft sweetness. Abby and Mike left Daniel and the shaded path for the bright field, where the sunlight formed halos around the edges of their hair. Clutching a toy dinosaur wearing a jetpack, Mike trailed a few uncertain steps behind his big sister. They stopped and stared at the enormous wedge of rock. "Is that it, Daddy?" Abby said. "How does it work?" Daniel joined his children, shrugged free of his backpack, and dropped it to the grass. "You climb on and fly," Daniel said. Abby squinted. "For real?" "Yeah, for real?" Mike asked. "Didn't you listen to what Grandma told you?" Daniel said. "That was a story, like in storybooks with fairies and wizards," Abby said. "Because if it's real, why can't you still fly? If I could fly, I'd fly everywhere and never come down, except for dinner." "I grew up and forgot how to do it," Daniel said. "Why'd you forget?" Abby asked. "I'll draw pictures of how to do it, or write it down so I don't ever forget." "You would anyway," Daniel told her. "Everyone does. Most people don't even miss it because they never realized they knew how to do it in the first place." "What about Mommy?" Abby said. "Did she fly?" Daniel thought of Ginny back at the cabin, as preoccupied with accounts and balances as she ever was. She had only agreed to visit his family's cabin for the sake of Abby and Mike, who adored their grandmother. No, your mother never flew. Now she doesn't believe anyone could ever fly. Maybe you could show Mom how. Then she can come with us, Abby said. Mommy's got a lot of work to do, sweetie. Besides, once you've forgotten, there's no going back, Daniel said. But if you fly while you can, you'll always remember it. Then the memory is there for when you grow up. Come on, I'll show you how to use the flying rock. Daniel led his children to the base of the stone, a huge chunk of striped granite that seemed to have fallen from the sky. It jutted from the earth on an angle, like a ramp, 15 feet long, 12 feet high at its tip, and sloped gently enough for a child to climb to the top. On the rock's far side, the clearing continued on a gentle slope for about 6 feet before the ground declined and plunged in a steep 30-foot slope toward a stream below. Stay close to the rock, Daniel said. He crouched and pointed northwest over the rippling green quilt of trees that spread outward from the hillside. Over that way is Grandma's cabin. See the plume of smoke? She's got the brick oven going. If you get turned around up here, use that smoke to find your direction. All right, who's first? Abby jumped up. I'll go. Okay, Daniel said. Climb up to the peak, but don't look over the edge. At the top, lie down on your tummy with your legs straight behind you. Stretch your arms out to your sides and close your eyes. When a good strong gust comes, lift your head up, snap your eyes open, and you'll be flying. Think you can swing it? Abby was already climbing the stone. Watch me, Daddy. It amazed Daniel how fearless she was, how much she trusted him. He cherished the excitement in her voice and the way she moved, her slender body so strong and capable that it made him proud. He wished Ginny could have come with them, if only to see how happy the children were. But even if she made time for what she considered pointless nonsense, Daniel's old friends wouldn't come, and the flying wouldn't work with Ginny here. Abby lowered herself to the stone and spread out her arms. Get ready, Abby, there's a good one coming, Daniel said. A gust rushed up the slope, rustling leaves and swirled Abby's hair. Her excited scream told Daniel the exact moment. She opened her eyes and saw the sky before her. I'm flying, Daddy, she called. Daniel had seen what Abby saw many times when he was a child. The height and angle of the rock combined with the descent of the slope created the illusion for anyone in Abby's position that there was no ground nearby, like being 100 feet in the air. And when the wind rushed past your face, it really did feel like flying, especially to a child. After the gust faded, Abby spun around, her face beaming. Did I do it right? She said. Perfect, honey, Daniel said. Mike tugged on his father's hand. My turn. I want to try. Daniel boosted Mike onto the stone. Abby guided him into position, then slid halfway down the rock to wait. In the distance, a wave of air moved the branches and rolled toward the clearing. Get ready, here it comes, Daniel said. Air streamed over the slope and embraced Mike. Yippee! The boy shouted. He stretched his arms as far as he could, pretending to be an airplane. He laughed until the wind died, then he rolled over smiling. Do it again, he said. Can I do it again? Sure, Daniel said, after we eat lunch. Daniel retrieved his backpack, then took out a blanket, which he spread on the grass, then pulled out wrapped sandwiches, apples, juice boxes, and a small wicker basket. Abby and Mike flopped on the picnic blanket, where they dug into peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and sipped from juice boxes. Flying makes me hungry, Dad, Mike said. Being awake makes you hungry, kiddo, Daniel said. Abby pointed at the little basket. What's in there? That's a treat for some friends of mine from when I was your age, the ones Grandma told you about. They're going to meet us here. Daniel stood with the basket. I should get things ready for them. He walked to the edge of the clearing, knelt down, removed a tiny cup and saucer from inside the basket, then set them on the grass. He poured milk into the cup from a small thermos. Next, he opened a jar of honey, spooned some into the milk, and stirred it. Finally, he placed 3 iced cookies from a plastic bag on the saucer. He prepared 5 more similar plates along the strip of light and shadow at the clearing's edge. Are your friends cats? Abby asked. No, Daniel laughed and returned to the blanket. Why do you think they'd be cats? Everyone knows cats like to drink milk from a cup, Abby said. If they're not cats, then who are they? Do they live out here? Are they going flying too? Daniel laughed. You'll find out soon enough. Now finish your lunches and maybe I've got an extra cookie or two for you. Grandma made them special for us and my friends. Grandma called them fairy cookies, Abby said. She said she makes them just so, and they're hard to make. The children finished their lunches and Daniel gave them each a couple of cookies. He ate two himself and savored their strong, sugary flavor and the vague bitterness it masked, the taste of ozone after a storm. The flavor transported him back to when he was Abby's age, when the future had seemed wondrous and full of potential. He feared the future he was raising Abby and Mike to face, worried they would find even darker times ahead than he could ever imagine. He wouldn't always be there to protect them. The tension between him and Ginny would break one day, then there would be no hiding it from the kids. Worse, the sadness that had crept into his soul seemed heavier and harder to shake every year. He finished the last cookie before he rested his head on his backpack. Can we fly again? Abby asked. We need to rest, Daniel said. Don't you feel sleepy? No, I want to fly again, Abby said. But then she yawned. Her eyes closed. Beside her, Mike curled up dozing on the blanket, his dinosaur in hand. Daniel waited until Abby nodded off, then let himself drift into a light sleep filled with airy dreams. It seemed only moments later that Abby shook his arm. Dad, she said in a loud whisper. Dad, they ate the cookies and milk. Daniel sat up. The nearest cup and saucer were empty. He checked the others. Hardly a crumb or drop of milk remained. Mike sat up, rubbing his eyes. Look, butterflies. Half a dozen large, brightly colored butterflies darted around the honeysuckle bushes, splashes of sparkling yellow and orange, stripes of furry indigo, flitting from branch to branch. Daniel approached the line of honeysuckle. The butterflies flocked around him, then scattered before all but one landed among the flowers. The last one alighted on the grass in front of Daniel, fanned its wings and shimmered. With a burst of pale light, it grew and changed into a woman with oversized, transparent butterfly wings. She stood 5 feet tall, wearing a diaphanous blue and white dress, which fluttered and snapped as if moved by the wind, even when the air hung still. Likewise, her silken white hair flowed as if caught in a perpetual funnel of air. A woven silver belt encircled her waist, and an iridescent tiara rested on her brow. Her delicate bare feet dangled several inches above the ground. She radiated a gelid sapphire light. The other butterflies flickered and turned into similar women, each smaller and shorter than the first, none as beautiful, yet all caressed by the same endless phantom breeze. Danny, you've grown so much. The woman's voice seemed to rise from thin air rather than her lips. I wondered if you'd ever come back. I'm sorry it's been so long, Daniel said. I brought my children. The blue woman floated past Daniel for a better look. They're absolutely stunning. And you remembered our most favorite treats, too. Such a sweet boy. The woman turned to the butterfly ladies. Aren't you all happy to see Danny? The ladies laughed, rustling honeysuckle flowers. Daniel waved for Abby and Mike to come to him. It's okay, he said. Come meet my friends. Abby stepped onto the grass. Mike clutched his sister's hand and followed her. Abby and Mike, Daniel said. Meet Ariel, the fairy queen of the winds. With Mike sticking beside her, Abby inched closer. No way, she said. For real? Ariel glided to Abby. Absolutely, unequivocally, for real. Do you live in the woods? Abby asked. I live in the air and the winds, in the sky and the clouds, little one. I live beneath the wings of birds and in the mouths of all living, breathing things. I live in the enchanted places, in the spaces between time. I live in splendor and glory. Abby scrunched her face. Where's glory? With a sweeping gesture, Ariel said, all around you, if you know where to look. I knew your daddy when he was no bigger than you, Abby, Ariel said. Then she stroked Mike's nose with her fingertip. Even when he was as small as you. I know your grandmother as well, and I knew her father and his mother, and others older than that. Do you know my mom? Abby said. Ariel's smile faltered. No, dear one, she never flew. That's what I brought Abby and Mike here for, Daniel said. You chose a good day. Such a beautiful, luscious wind blows today, Ariel said. First, let me look into your eyes, Danny. It seemed a long time that Ariel gazed at him, but only a few seconds passed before she shuddered, and a faint blue tear ran down her right cheek. Daniel, I'm sorry. You've tried so hard, failed so often, and worse is yet to come. It isn't how I would have had things for you, and yet you've not forgotten what wonders exist in this world. You make us proud, but you've forgotten more than you realize. I remember flying. I see it clearly in my dreams. Clearly, perhaps, but not completely, Ariel said. You've gone out into the wide world, Danny, forsaken your innocence, traveled and experienced success and failure, richness and loss. You are not the boy you were when you flew. You remember the flying, but I think you've forgotten the price of it. The price? Daniel said. Ariel frowned. You have forgotten. You paid it, as did your mother, your grandfather, and your great-grandmother, and many others through the years. That was our bargain, and no harm ever came to any of you. No, I remember, Daniel said. The knowledge still lives inside you, Ariel said, but you've grown so that you can't recognize what you know anymore. It's like forgetting how to fly. The knowledge of flying still exists in you, but one can never find it again once it's lost. Are you sure about letting your little ones fly? If you are, then it shall be done. Daniel studied the wide-eyed awe in his children's faces, their excitement and curiosity. They felt no need to question what their senses and their father told them. I'm sure, he said. I want them to fly. Then so they shall, Ariel said. Abby, Mike, come with me. Ariel shooed the children toward the flying rock. The butterfly ladies surrounded the stone while Ariel led Abby and Mike to its peak and sat them at the edge. She knelt between them. Are you ready? I'm ready, Mike said. Dad showed us how. Still holding his dinosaur toy, he tucked his legs under him to get into position. Ariel stopped him. Not like that. That's how Dad said, Abby told her. That was practice, Ariel said. Ariel took the children by their hands and stood. Wait for a strong young wind. When you feel it all around you, think of being light, of shrugging free from gravity, the way you shed a jacket, and then you fly. Get ready, a good wind is coming. A gust shook the trees and then flowed around Ariel, Abby, and Mike. It pulled Daniel's breath away and raked dust against his face. He blinked, and when he opened his eyes again, Abby and Mike were in the air, a foot above the flying rock. They rose with Ariel guiding them, and then the Queen of the Winds released their hands. The children's faces glowed with joy and astonishment as they lifted higher into the air, hesitant as their bodies adjusted to the sensation. Abby stretched her arms out, turned, and began to glide. A fresh wind pushed her along, drawing her higher, and she laughed. Mike floated to her side. They hung in the air together while Ariel hovered below them. Then they darted out over the trees and raced each other before they made a loop. One by one, the butterfly ladies leapt into the air, watching over them. Earthbound, Daniel crept to the peak of the flying rock, dangled his feet over the edge, and watched. Ariel settled beside him. They took to it much more quickly than you did, she said. I fell a few times before I got it right, Daniel said. We were there to catch you, to make sure you never got anything worse than a bump or a scrape. You weren't always there, Daniel said. He spoke the words, not knowing entirely what he meant. Ariel's expression turned serious. Daniel thought of his worst falls. Ariel and her ladies had protected him from serious harm, yet they had not shielded him from every danger. He recalled blue sky whirling as he darted over the trees, ranging as far as his family's cabin before circling back only to find himself flying head-on into a raging darkness. And Ariel and her ladies, only tiny bright figures gathered upon the flying rock. Daniel jolted to his feet, poised on the rock's edge. Out over the woods, Abby and Mike looked like birds. He called their names, but they were too far to hear him. Now you remember, Ariel said. Can you bring them back? Daniel asked. You know I can. But if they are truly fly, they must do so on their own. You know this to be true, elsewise you wouldn't have brought them to me. Daniel studied the sky, clear and blue, except for a gray haze gathering on the horizon. The wind kicked up, trees bent and swayed. The butterfly ladies returned to the clearing. Daniel called Abby and Mike again. This time they seemed to hear him. They glided toward the clearing, but the darkness on the horizon came on too fast, painting the sky the color of ash and wet clay. Voices in the darkness sang sour melodies and grumbled like far-off thunder. They stirred terrible echoes in his memory. Abby grabbed her brother's hand and they rushed straight for the clearing, cutting the sky like hawks as the darkness overtook them and swallowed them from sight. Ariel asked, "Is it only in your dreams that your memories of this live?" Daniel didn't answer. He understood now, or rather, he found his way back to an understanding he'd misplaced long ago. On the other side of every light existed darkness. As much as his memories of flying shaped his dreams, they also bred his nightmares. 3 of the things in the tempest appeared and flew like giant ravens speeding over the clearing, wicked laughter ringing in their wake. They wore ragged black dresses laced with silver threads that sparked and crackled like lightning. Bone earrings dangled in their wet black hair. The Queen of Storms and her retinue. Negatives of Ariel and her sisters, infused with the rage of hurricanes and cyclones, poisoned with the despair of leveled buildings and uprooted trees. To fly without risk of falling means nothing, Ariel said. No mortal can live in glory alone. That is only for the Fae. Abby and Mike must show the Queen of Storms they accept that, and they will be fine. That is the price. If they fail, Daniel said, if she refuses them. Ariel sighed. Then another price will be paid. Has anyone ever paid that price? Daniel asked. Ariel's expression hardened and the cast of her eyes frightened Daniel. I offer you this, as I offered it to your mother and her father and his mother and all those in your line before you. From the folds of her dress, Ariel produced a round blue fruit about the size of a plum with a green stem and leaves. If you wish to protect them, eat this, and you'll be able to fly long enough to go and bring them back. If you do, they will remember nothing of this day, neither flying nor the darkness, and in their minds where the exhilaration of what they are experiencing should live for a lifetime, there will be a dull, aching emptiness that they shall never fill. Then when you return to this clearing, my ladies and I shall be gone. No one in your family shall ever greet us again. Daniel eyed the fruit in Ariel's hand. Darkness filled the entire sky and raindrops pelted his face. High above, black and indigo shapes formed a ring above the flying rock and circled, singing with voices like ice scraping across glass. Glory lies on the other side of fear, Ariel said. Without awareness of the darkness, would your memories of flying be so rich? Would you ever have risked truly being father to your children? Inside the storm, someone screamed. Abby plunged from the roiling cloud cover and spiraled toward the trees. Mike followed, racing to catch her, his arms outstretched. Abby reached for him. Daniel thought of how she'd waited for her brother at the bottom of the flying rock, of how they always watched out for each other. He looked for the fruit, now gone from Ariel's hand. Abby neared the treetops, then vanished into the leaves and branches. Mike pulled out of his dive and skimmed the trees, searching. Thunder boomed from the storm clouds. A trio of dark shapes broke from the grayness and flashed toward Mike like needles. Mike cut sideways toward the thin plume of smoke rising from his grandmother's cabin. The storm fairies closed the distance fast. The trees below Mike rustled and shook, leaving a trail of leaves in her wake. Abby rocketed from the woods. She reached her brother, lifting him away from the chasing storm fairies. Together, they disappeared back into the darkness. Lightning flashed brighter and the clouds churned. The 6 circling storm fairies arrowed away to rejoin their flock. Lightning flashes came, growls of thunder rumbled from the heavens, even as stinging rain blinded Daniel and tore at his skin. And then the storm broke. A hole opened in the clouds. Sunlight streamed through it, pushing away the gray and black. The thunder faded and the downpour dissolved into a cool mist. In moments, the storm vanished, the storm fairies with it. Abby and Mike flew back to the clearing. The Queen of Storms trailed them. Her ragged black gown swirled around her. The color of an overcast dawn lived in her skin, and black knobs that flashed with white light formed her eyes. Her hair trailed behind her like a pouring rain. She paced the children until they reached the rock. Then with a cold, piercing shriek that drilled through Daniel's bones, she blasted away, leaving a frigid gale behind her. Daniel wrapped his arms around Abby and Mike and held him tight. I'm so sorry, he said, but I believed you could do it, and you did. It's okay, Daddy, Abby said. We stuck together like you always say we should. Yeah, Mike said. Then he jumped into an action pose, thrusting his jetpack dinosaur at Daniel. Jet Dino was on our side too. Can we go flying again? Abby said. The storm's gone now. Yeah, we want to do it again, Mike said. Speechless, Daniel nodded. He felt as if he'd hardly let go of Abby and Mike before they were back in the air, soaring and laughing. The butterfly ladies leapt from the meadow and joined them. They're very brave, Ariel said. The sight of his children flying held Daniel too captivated to reply. Later, Abby and Mike came down to say farewell to Ariel and her butterfly ladies and promised the Queen of the Winds they would come back one day. Then the fairies faded into the woods. Daniel let Abby lead them home, wondering if he would ever see the flying rock again. Over dinner, the children told their mother about Ariel, the Queen of Storms, the fairy cookies, the butterflies, and how they had flown. Ginny smiled and listened, but when the children weren't looking, she rolled her eyes and glared at Daniel. Even the sadness her contempt stirred within him didn't diminish his joy at having seen his children not only fly, but soar. If there were to be dark days ahead, at least they would have that to hold them up until whatever storms came their way broke and faded. Thank you.
That was lovely. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I had just a touch of honey in this.
I think the last time we had honey, we had 2 stories with honey too, didn't we?
Probably.
Or 2 stories with bees, maybe?
I think we've had bee stories, not as in bee movie, but bee stories. We've had honey stories. All right. Well, another evening of Story Hour. I want to thank Wendy N. Wagner, James Chambers, for really wonderful work, great readings. Thank you for joining us. And thank you all out there for joining us again for another week at Story Hour. Next week. Oh, and of course, I want to thank my fabulous co-host, Laura Blackwell, without whose collaboration I might very well have given up on this project a long time ago. So I'm really happy. Well, I don't know, but very happy to be working with you on this week after week. Next week, please come back. We have Ann Sheldon and Dave Ring. Promises to be a great show. And meanwhile, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you. Good night, everybody.